I think Zelensky he suspended elections. He's locked down churches. He's locked up nuns. I'm a Christian. I don't like this guy at all.
Candace Owens just went off on the Stephen A. Smith show, and let me tell you, she did not hold back. From calling out the absolute disaster of the Biden regime to exposing the left's complete disconnect from reality, Candace Owens came in loaded with receipts and unapologetic truth. She shredded the media's narrative, called out the Kamala coronation scam, and absolutely obliterated the ridiculous double standards on Ukraine. Let's immediately jump in and hear what Candace Owens has to say on the Stephen A. Smith show.
First things first, you know, when you saw the election results take fold and you saw Donald Trump win the election, popular vote, electoral college vote, et cetera, what were the thoughts that ran through your mind when you saw the results transpiring?
You know, I think that the first thing I thought was that old school expression, it's the economy, stupid. You know, we've done a lot and everyone's screaming at each other all the time. There's been all these social movements and he versus her and black versus white. But at the end of the day, people just weren't living well under the Biden regime. I call it a regime, but it gets down to how was I living? What were the gas prices? How expensive are groceries? Are you willing to try something different? And I think genuinely, there's a fatigue that is setting in, that has set in, that was beginning to sort of percolate, of people that are just exhausted with being angry. Do you know what I mean? Like the media constantly selling, this guy's this guy's that, she's this, she's that. I think we're all just tired, and that's kind of a good thing.
Do you believe that Donald Trump won the election, or that the progressive left and their thought process, their policy, some of the things that they were spewing, it was more a product of them losing? That's what I've been saying. It wasn't about him winning. It was about America saying, nah, he's closer to normal than what the hell we're hearing over here. We don't like this. And that's what transpired. What do you think it was?
You are completely on the money with that. It was really more that the left lost. And it was a weird, it was very strange to watch Kamala run. I will say that, because she really only ran for 100 days, right? Trump had been running throughout four years, basically, kind of upset about the loss in 2020. And she kind of just comes in and it's almost like a coronation, which I think was disrespectful to the left-leaning voter base. Like it was just, well, he has kind of said he's knighted me and therefore I am the person that you should be electing. And she didn't really work for it, and rather was, I think, quite accusatory. If you don't elect her, it's because you have an issue with women. I don't think Obama's speech to the brothers, the quote unquote brothers, helped him any. He's been gone. He's in Martha's Vineyard, living in a house, God knows how much it costs, not something I could afford. And then he kind of reappears to sort of lecture the brothers about their responsibility. And I just don't think it sat well this time around. Just a different time, a different audience, and people kind of realizing, hey, that's not really enough. Paint me a vision. Like, tell me what you're actually going to do for me. Don't tell me that it's just simply my responsibility to give this woman votes because she's a woman.
Candace Owens just torched that nonsense. I don't know about you guys, but I am so sick of this forced identity politics garbage. Like, yeah, let's just ignore competence policies or literally anything else and vote purely based on what box someone checks. Nah. And she's right. This whole Kamala coronation thing was an absolute joke. They thought they could just guilt trip voters into supporting her. And when that flopped spectacularly, they blamed the voters instead of their own failure. Stephen A. Smith seemed to have agreed with her on this take.
You know, I want to transition to Trump, back to Trump in this regard. We just saw it, the world just saw. It wasn't a press conference or anything like that. I don't call it that. Him with Ukrainian President Zelensky and how he went at him and what have you. Now, Zelensky, if I remember correctly, you didn't speak too highly of him. I want to make sure I'm quoting you accurately. You called him a homosexual actor. Is that true? Did you call him that?
I also just called him the neighborhood crackhead, kind of just goes around asking for money. I've called him a welfare queen, ghetto. This is the thing. The media kind of had me depicted throughout BLM as this person that uses these words to describe Black people. I'm like, no. Let's be very clear. When I'm calling somebody like Zelensky a welfare queen, there's a reason for that. You come here with your hand out, asking, making demands. It's funny because I was having a discussion with my husband about this. And, you know, it's people that tend to need the most that that make these sorts of demands, and they're so arrogant. He's taken billions away, unaccounted billions, by the way. So you and I have to get to work because Zelensky wants his borders protected, and we can't have our borders protected because that would be a racist thing to ask for. But he's allowed to demand that you and I get to work because he spent all the billions. His wife is shopping in Paris. The oligarchs in Ukraine are all buying yachts. And yeah, I have absolutely no respect for him, but I want to say I have not respected that man since day one. This is not something that's new. I just saw him coming.
It's not something that's new, but what about Trump and Vance and how they conducted themselves? You and I might disagree on this particular issue because I don't disagree with what you're saying in terms of, I was on the record saying, listen, you're coming with your hand out, you need money. You might not want to be confrontational. You might want to be a bit more diplomatic, Zelensky, because you're the one that's in need. And Trump wasn't wrong when he said, or you don't have any of the cards. You don't have any of the cards. The flip side to it, however, is that the press conference, you're in the Oval Office. We know this is the White House. This isn't someplace in Ukraine. And he's got broken English, and you got the vice president interrupting him. You got them, I thought, somewhat bullying him to some degree. I just didn't think it was necessary. It was a good look. That's where I'm coming from. Am I wrong in feeling that way?
No, I think you're perfectly, I mean, these are your feelings. They're valid, right? If that's how you felt. For me, I felt it was refreshing. I'm so tired of politics. I know they always button it up for us. They're constantly telling us, oh, this, and saying things that sound good, but don't actually result in good things. And I think it was sort of the frustration of how much he has taken from America to not come with some respect. And I likened it to, even when you go to your granddad's house and it's your birthday, your mom kind of makes you wear something special. You know, he's going to give you a card and slip some cash in there, $100. Granddad's always good for that. And you just come with some decorum and some respect. This dude has been wearing military fatigues for like 5 years now, okay?
Candace Owens just exposed the Zelensky cosplay act for what it really is. I mean, come on. You're showing up begging for billions in taxpayer money, and you can't even put on a suit. You're not in the trenches, bro. You're out here doing Vogue photo shoots, flying to award shows, and hobnobbing with elites. And yet the media still tries to paint him as some struggling wartime leader. I don't know about you guys, but I'm over the double standard.
Put on a suit. As soon as he gets out of the car, Trump's like, well, he's dressed up. This should let you know, this should signal to the public that what he's doing is an act. Why? Give me a scenario, a reason why he can't put on a suit. Even if you're in the midst of a war, why can't you put on a suit when you're coming to ask for money? Well, because he wants people to see him as a guy that's downtrodden in the trenches. And he's not that. This guy has been on the cover of Vanity Fair. He's been on the cover of Vogue. He's been on the cover of Forbes. He's doing photo shoots. He did a 3-hour podcast with Lex Friedman. He asked and was declined a spot to go to the Oscars a couple of years ago. And so this is making a mockery. It's just making him put on a suit.
See,
you know?
this is why people got to be careful about messing with you, because I was getting ready to disagree with you until you threw out those last. I didn't know he tried to go to the Oscars. I didn't know he tried to be on the cover of Vogue. I didn't know that stuff, Candace. I honestly didn't know. Okay, that does change it a little bit.
And he is a literal actor, by the way. You know that, right?
That I know. What I will say this, though, any sympathy for the fact that Russia did attack his nation? I mean, that there is some sympathy for that, right? We see the rubble. We see the catastrophe that is Ukraine. We see Putin bombing them, for crying out loud. We've seen that happen, right?
Yeah. So the thing for me is, and the reason why I say that I've had this opinion since the very beginning, is I don't rely on politicians. I think all politicians lie. And so I was reading the transcripts leading up to this moment of Putin's speeches and Biden's speeches and trying to discern what the truth was. And Putin was saying, you guys gave us assurances that NATO was not going to expand 1 inch eastward into our territory. Essentially, NATO is a military. We were putting a military on his border, despite in 1989, when the Berlin Wall came down, as a condition, an agreement for them to agree to take down the Berlin Wall. We promised, and you can go look at this in NSA declassified documents. James Baker was the Secretary of State at that time.
Yes, he was.
We promised them that we would never move NATO eastward. So you have to imagine the memory that they have, and they're going, why are you now doing that? Now all of a sudden we're saying that Ukraine is going to join NATO, and he's saying this is unacceptable. America can't keep changing its mind. And so when I was able to validate what he said and to read the speeches, you cannot walk away from that without an understanding that we are the aggressors. Everything that we say Russia is doing, recreating the Soviet Union, we are doing that. What is the European Union? What is NATO? And we've been getting away for it for too long under this guise of, quote unquote, spreading democracy. So I fundamentally disagreed with what I saw as Western propaganda trying to paint Putin as a monster for holding us to our promises and not telling the public that. He just randomly woke up one day and just said, I want to do hood rat stuff with my friends. And he went into Ukraine. That's a fairy tale. That's not what happened. And not beyond that, like you saw when he sat down with Tucker Carlson, he asked to join NATO himself. Why are we not having a productive relationship with Russia?
See, this is why Candace Owens is dangerous to the mainstream narrative, because she actually does her research. The entire Western media machine spent years brainwashing people into thinking that Putin was just some unprovoked villain. And here comes Candace Owens dropping receipts. She's literally citing declassified NSA documents. From the looks of it, Stephen A. Smith seems to be enjoying interviewing Candace Owens so far.
I call that Cold War hangover. People that grew up under their desks afraid of a nuclear bomb can never see Russia outside of being villainous. And quite frankly, I think Zelensky he's suspended elections. He's locked down churches. He's locked up nuns. I'm a Christian. I don't like this guy at all.
That's Candace Owens. That's Candace Owens, being quite honest. I get that part.
This is why Candace Owens is one of the most important voices in politics today. She walked onto Stephen A. Smith's show and wrecked every single dishonest narrative that's been shoved down our throats for years. From exposing Biden's failures to obliterating the identity politics scam to calling out the absolute nonsense of the Ukraine money pit, she laid out cold, hard truth and didn't back down for a second.